Bartosz Wielinski, the Deputy Editor-in-Chief at the Gazeta Wyborcza, joining us live from Warsaw. Bartosz, thank you so much for your time on this day. So let's start with Volodymyr Zelensky today urging NATO leaders for 1% of their planes, 1% of their tanks, a very specific request. NATO has in the past rebuffed Ukraine's calls to impose a no-fly zone. Rather, what kind of response is likely to happen to today's weapons request after these summits that are happening right now?
Well, it has already been declared that Ukraine will get more anti-armor missiles, more anti-aircraft missiles, and a lot of anti-nuclear, anti-chemical protection, because there are serious concerns that Russia may use nuclear weapons or chemical weapons against Ukrainian military or against Ukrainian civilians. So Ukrainian army must also be equipped to deal with the radiation, to deal with the contamination. But I don't believe that NATO will soon send any, fighter planes or, tanks to Ukraine. This is difficult to handle, and probably it's not going to happen soon. There are talks on handing over Soviet anti-aircraft system from countries like Slovakia or Bulgaria, which are well-equipped in similar system that Ukrainians using now, the S-300 missiles. And that could be done. Russia is very anxious about that, rather nervous. Lavrov, the foreign minister of Russia, was threatening with severe consequences to NATO countries, to Slovakia, if such a deal would in fact take place. So they are threatening NATO to attack the supply convoys with NATO equipment. That could lead to the escalation. Well, the problem is that NATO is facing that war in Ukraine must not escalate outside of Ukraine, must not escalate into NATO conflict, because then it would transform into World War III. With possible nuclear release. This is a scenario we don't want to have, and I believe NATO will do everything they could to prevent it. But parallelly, they will arm Ukraine. They will support Ukraine with those highly effective missiles. They have been put in very good use in Ukraine. We have seen a lot of pictures of destroyed tanks. Today, they managed to bomb Russian ship in Berdyansk, which is a huge achievement.
Right. We made mention of the concerns out of Poland about what Vladimir Putin may be doing next. Potential spillover from fighting in the west of Ukraine or something more targeted. How worried are people in Poland about the long-term plans after Ukraine? What are you hearing and what do you know?
Well, this is obvious for us that if Ukraine fails, the next target for Putin will be Poland and Baltic states, and then maybe Germany or even France. That the Soviet Union had its plans to reach the Atlantic coast within few weeks of extreme, brutal military operation in 70s and 80s. But now, we receive a lot of threats from Putin, from his cronies. His spokesman didn't exclude the possibility of his nuclear war. And nuclear warheads, speaking with the CNN yesterday. But in fact, I believe that that's what Putin wants to do. Well, he stalled in Ukraine. His military lost its reputation of Russia is no longer a superpower with a military that can't, support its troops with fuel, food, or munition. We've seen, terrible scenes from Ukraine that Russian soldiers are surrendering, abandoning the equipment, the tanks, the transporters. So I don't think that conventionally Russia could be a further threat for NATO countries, and that's why they started talking about nukes, because they want to simply to scare the population in Western countries, especially in Western Europe, which are less informed about Russia. They didn't have any Russian experience of being a satellite of Russia. So then they do a psychological warfare and try to frighten the West, talking about possible nuclear exchange with the NATO, which is something it would be devastating, terrible, of course, but the Russia would also suffer the nuclear revenge if they start playing with nuclear weapons. But escalating the information warfare with Europe, with Poland. They try to incite hatred between Poles and the migrants from Ukraine, refugees from Ukraine. They started, many bizarre posting over social networks saying that Ukrainians will steal our jobs. They are privileged, more privileged than Polish citizens, and so on. So we observe a huge activity from the disinformation propaganda divisions. Yesterday, Poland threw out 45 Russian spies who worked for Russian embassy. So the intelligence also heavily involved in dealing with NATO countries, with Poland. And we have to see what will happen. Last week, Russia bombarded a military base very close to the Polish border. The fumes, the pillars of smoke were seen from cities, from villages on the Polish side, and the blast was also heard from the Polish side. So it was also a sign that Russia could be ready to strike Poland. The Americans sent 2 batteries of anti-missile system Patriots to protect the airbase in Rzeszów, which is now the hub for receiving supplies and aid for Ukraine. So, I believe that we will be protected against such incursions of Russia. In general, NATO is sending more and more troops to Poland. So right. It won't be like Russia strikes Poland and there's only Poland to defend Poland. No, there will be right. a lot of troops from different NATO countries, American troops, Canadian, British, and so on. So there's also a clear sign, and Joe Biden will say it in today's in Poland, that those countries on the eastern flank of NATO, former socialist countries like Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia, Baltic states, they are not alone. If right. Russia tries to touch them, will be severely punished for that by the whole alliance with right. the United States, with Canada, and so.
That certainly is a message that has been reiterated today out of Brussels. Thank you so much for your insight and your time. Bartosz Wielinski, live from Warsaw. Appreciate it. Be well.
Thank you.